Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for this safety and resilience training. My name is Vera Salzburn, and I am Program Director for Safety and Resilience Programs at Chatham County Safety Net Planning Council. We're here today to focus on school suicide safety and resilience. In 2015, Georgia passed the Jason Flatt Act. This legislation requires mandatory youth suicide awareness and prevention training for school personnel. With today's training, we intend to equip you with knowledge and skills that can help you create suicide-safer schools, as well as support yourself and others during emotionally difficult times. We have been working in Chatham County, Georgia since 2017 in partnership with the Savannah Chatham Public School System, Gateway Community Service Board, and other diverse community partners. Together, we're implementing evidence-based training to include the community resiliency model, suicide talk, and mindful self-compassion. Today's session combines elements from these multiple programs, offering a comprehensive approach to building resilience in schools and communities. While you are here as a part of your mandatory job training, we would like to invite you to take care of yourself emotionally. The subject we are discussing today can be heavy and overwhelming for some. So please feel free to redirect your attention and ask for help if you experience acute emotional discomfort. This session is aimed at the entire school community because we think that by working together, we can prevent suicide and become more resilient. It is our goal for everyone to know that help is available and where to find it. So, the learning objectives for this session include: build an understanding of youth mental health and trauma, describe the window of tolerance and why it matters, identify helpful strategies for building resilience, learn how to take the first steps to help a person with thoughts of suicide, and finally, contribute to safety and well-being in the community. So let's begin with looking at numbers, statistics, which speak quite loudly and help us better understand the problem of youth mental health, trauma, and suicide. According to the latest report by the National Alliance on Mental Illness, suicide is the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 24. 1 in 6 United States youth aged 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. 46% of United States youth under age of 18 have had at least one adverse childhood experience, also known as ACE, and 20% have had at least two. Trauma is a risk factor in nearly all behavioral health and substance use disorders. Also, 90% of sexually abused children, 77% of children exposed to a school shooting, and 35% of urban youth exposed to community violence develop post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. The concept of ACEs comes from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and Kaiser Foundation study, which was completed in 1998 and discovered that childhood trauma leads to adult onset of chronic disease, depression, and other mental illness, violence and being a victim of violence, as well as financial and social problems. Adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood ages 0 to 17 and include experiencing violence, abuse, or neglect, witnessing violence in the home or community, and having a family member attempt or die by suicide. Also included are aspects of the child's environment that can undermine their sense of safety, stability, and bonding, such as growing up in a household with substance use problems, mental health problems, or instability due to parental separation, or household members being in jail or prison. ACEs are linked to chronic health problems, mental illness, and substance use problems in adulthood. ACEs can also negatively impact education, job opportunities, and earning potential. However, ACEs can be prevented. Please note that the examples on the slide and the ones that I just mentioned are not meant to be a complete list of adverse experiences. There are many other traumatic experiences that could impact health and well-being, including racism, gender discrimination, witnessing a sibling being abused, witnessing violence outside the home, witnessing a father being abused by a mother, being bullied by a peer or adult, involvement with the foster care system, living in a war zone, living in an unsafe neighborhood, losing a family member to deportation, and others. Hundreds of additional research papers based on the ACEs study have also been published, which led to identifying the three large categories of ACEs: adverse childhood experiences that we just discussed, adverse community experiences such as poverty, structural racism, poor housing, and poor air or water quality, and adverse climate experiences such as wildfires, sea levels rising, floods, and pandemics. Many people experience trauma, and it can occur in a number of different forms and levels of severity. The trauma experienced after death of a loved one can be very different from trauma experienced during a violent war or trauma from being attacked by a dog, and may result in different reactions. While there are many sources of adverse experiences, it is important to note that what matters is the person's perception of the traumatic event and not the society's view of the event as being major or minor. Another way to look at the degree of trauma is by examining how a person may experience toxic stress in these three ways. Too much, too fast. For example, a natural disaster devastating a community in one day. Too little for too long. For example, being bullied at school every day or week. And too much for too long. For example, experiencing continuous sexual assault and abuse at home, or even a COVID-19 pandemic. Resilience is people's unique capacity to handle stress, which impacts their ability to cope with trauma. We all have different levels of resilience. What is highly distressing to one person may not cause the same emotional response in someone else. So the key to understanding trauma is to examine how it affects the individual rather than focusing on the event itself. All kinds of trauma create stress reactions. It is important to begin to learn that reactions from the 6 areas: physical, behavioral, spiritual, relational, thinking, and emotional are common reactions to highly stressful and/or traumatic experiences, and while they affect the mind, body, and spirit, they are not mental weakness. If you understand what is happening when you or someone you know reacts to a traumatic event, you may be less fearful and better able to cope or help. Please take a moment to review this list of common reactions during and after traumatic events. As humans, we all have a nervous system which gets activated based on internal or external triggers to ultimately help us survive danger. We are specifically talking about the autonomic nervous system, which is responsible for our involuntary responses to stress and trauma. Our autonomic nervous system is a two-part mechanism consisting of sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system serves as an accelerator and puts us in a state of hyperarousal. When it gets activated by a perceived threat and fear, it puts us into fight or flight mode. For example, fight response means fighting back physically or verbally. Flight response might be literally running away from danger or isolating and avoiding others. The parasympathetic nervous system serves as a brake and puts us in a state of hypoarousal. When it gets activated, it puts us in a freeze mode. For example, with freezing, we play dead, so the enemy will leave us alone. When you're exposed to trauma, like physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, your nervous system automatically takes over in an effort to keep you safe. Depending on the threat, your sympathetic nervous system may have you fight or flee. On the other hand, when that's not possible, your parasympathetic nervous system will shut down your system and you may freeze. In the short term, these automatic stress responses are adaptive. They are part of your automatic survival instinct. But if you're exposed to trauma over and over, your survival instincts can get stuck in the on or off position, so these adaptive survival strategies can become maladaptive and cause a number of physical, emotional, relational, and psychiatric difficulties. Humans aren't designed to stay in a chronic state of stress, and over time, these survival states can sneak into your daily life when you are triggered due to past trauma. The window of tolerance is a term coined by Dr. Dan Siegel and is now commonly used to understand and describe normal brain-body reactions, especially following adversity. The window of tolerance is an optimal zone of arousal in which people can function most effectively. It is not a window of happiness. We can be happy or sad or anything in between within the window, and being able to manage our emotions and make healthy choices. When people are within this window, They are typically able to readily receive, process, and integrate information, and otherwise respond to the demands of everyday life without much difficulty. We may experience hurt, anxiety, pain, anger that bring us close to the edges of the window, but generally we are able to utilize strategies to keep us within this window. Similarly, we may feel too exhausted, sad, or shut down, but we generally can shift out of this. When stress and trauma shrink your window of tolerance, it doesn't take much to throw you off balance. Getting bumped out of your window of tolerance is not a problem. It becomes problematic when we get stuck outside of it. People with trauma often do get stuck in an on or off mode or jump from one to another. When an individual jumps out or feels pushed out of their window of tolerance to the hyperarousal or hypoarousal zone, the prefrontal cortex, which is the rational thinking part of the brain, is essentially going offline. At the same time, the limbic system, which is your emotional brain, stays active, removing ability to think through actions and consequences. That's why before any type of thinking or making sense of a situation can happen, individuals need to find a way back into their window of tolerance through self-soothing and self-regulating behaviors, which will allow all regions of the brain to get back online and function appropriately. When we are in the window, we are able to make decisions, respond rather than react, and ultimately be our best selves. When working with people impacted by trauma, it is important to help them learn how to widen their personal, unique window of tolerance, as well as how to have methods to stay in the window of tolerance. We will discuss these strategies in the upcoming slides. We would like to offer you a few strategies to help others access the window of tolerance. First, try to respond in a sensory rather than cognitive level. This means adjusting the tone, volume, inflections of your voice, proximity and posturing of your body, and breathing to a level that will present as calm and will help to co-regulate the individual you are interacting with. For example, when a student seems to be in his on mode, I would usually use a calm and more quiet voice. I may need to position my body to where I am not face to face with the student, which can feel threatening, but instead more side to side. I would also watch my own breathing and would try to slow it down and make slower body movements. When a student is in his off mode, I may need to speak a little bit louder, move my body more around, and maybe help them move as well. Second, validate their emotions and offer to help them regulate. For example, saying, "It looks like you're feeling upset. Would it be helpful if we take a break and stretch?" You may also offer to talk about something else, drink a glass of water or juice, or go for a walk. Third, try not to engage in behavioral cause and effect approaches. For example, avoid saying, "If you just stop doing this, we can get somewhere. These are higher functions of the brain and not something they are capable in the moment. Rather, this is likely to result in increased escalation. Fourth, use invitational language, which is language that incorporates invitations and options rather than commands. So use phrases such as "in your own time," or "where would you like to start," or "what are you able to tell me about what happened?" Avoid questions that start with why. For instance, "why did you do this?" Instead, focus on person's feelings and thoughts during and after the event. Avoid directives such as "explain to me why you did this." Instead say, "would you tell me what you are able to about your experience?" Or, "would you tell me what you are able to about your feelings and thoughts?" And the fifth strategy is about regulating emotions by shifting attention to a pleasant thought or a memory. For example, when a student seems to be outside of their window of tolerance, perhaps asking them about their pets or what they like to do or places they like to visit can remind them of the happy moments in life. Spend some time asking them about the details of the things that make them smile. And by doing so, you may inspire them and even remind them of hopefulness and strength. When helping others access their window of tolerance, we also need to remember about our own window. Again, as human beings, we all have a nervous system that goes through its ups and downs. We all get affected by others' moods, words, or behaviors. So it is important to practice resilience techniques that can help respond rather than react to whatever stresses we are facing. Here are a few helpful strategies. 1. Practicing mindfulness. This simply means staying in the here and now by paying attention to your external environment, colors, smells, sounds, or internal environment, physical sensations, emotions, and thoughts. Simply noticing what is in the present moment without getting carried away in your own mind into the future or past. 2. Using breath work. For example, extending exhalation, counting breaths, and using diaphragmatic breathing can help calm your body and mind. 3. Using posture and movement to help your body feel more comfortable and safe. Perhaps locating your physical center of gravity by pressing your feet into the ground or moving your body in a way that feels pleasant. 4. Soothing your senses by finding pleasant and calming things to look at, touch, smell, hear, and taste. And 5. Applying self-compassion, which means treating yourself the way you would treat a good friend. tapping into the kinder inner voice and offering yourself words of encouragement, support, forgiveness, and understanding, rather than judging yourself for your mistakes. So now, after we discussed how adversities, trauma, and toxic stress may impact a person's nervous system and affect the window of tolerance, let's move into the next part of our training that can offer you some strategies for intervening when someone is struggling with thoughts of suicide. While there's no single cause, suicide most often occurs when stressors exceed a person's ability to cope, meaning when their nervous system gets stuck in an on or off mode for extended periods of time. Trauma places a person at a higher risk for mental health issues such as depression and addiction. People who have experienced trauma are also at a greater risk for suicide. It is important to understand, however, that many factors contribute to suicide among those with and without mental health conditions. Environmental factors include financial problems, relationship problems, stressful events or loss, criminal legal problems. Historical factors include previous suicide attempts, family history of suicide, childhood abuse, neglect, and finally, health risk factors include chronic illness or pain, brain injury, mental health problems, and substance use problems. There is no one reason why people become suicidal. Instead, people become vulnerable to suicide due to a combination of biological, psychological, and social factors. People may inherit a tendency to develop a mental illness, or fail to learn how to cope effectively with stress for any number of reasons. People may also experience painful, disturbing, or traumatic events that overwhelm the coping mechanisms that they have developed. The truth is that people who attempt suicide are in pain, whether it is emotional, physical, financial pain. They just don't see a way out of their pain. They feel overwhelmed, lonely, and hopeless. So our goal is to offer hope and show that help is available. Most people who take their lives exhibit one or more warning signs, either through their talk, behavior, or mood. It is important to look for a change in behavior or the presence of entirely new behaviors, especially when related to a painful event, loss, or change. Common warning signs include a sense of hopelessness, isolation, aggression and irritability, possession of lethal means, feeling like a burden, drastic mood changes, frequently talking about death, self-harm, engaging in risky behaviors, making funeral arrangements, giving away things, substance use, direct threats of suicide, and low self-esteem. Helping a person at risk involves meeting their needs while also being aware of your own needs. The SAFE model, or SAFE, can help you remember the steps when intervening with someone thinking about suicide. The letter S in the SAFE model stands for stay. Make sure to check in with yourself and stay in your own window of tolerance when talking to a person with thoughts of suicide. Also, if possible, help them access and stay in their window. A conversation about suicide may often be difficult, even overwhelming. It can evoke feelings of fear, sadness, guilt, and shame. It is important to recognize the initial reactions that may come up from a person at risk and your own, and use the previously discussed strategies to calm the emotional brain and bring online the thinking brain so both of you can make good decisions. Remember that your reactions and attitude can influence the intervention, so try to be patient, persistent, and respectful. The letter A in the SAFE model stands for ask. Ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? It communicates that you are open to speaking about suicide in a non-judgmental and supportive way. Ask them directly, clearly, and as soon as you can. Asking in this direct, unbiased manner can open the door for effective dialogue about their emotional pain and can allow everyone involved to see what next steps need to be taken. Do not ever promise to keep their thoughts of suicide a secret. Asking about suicide also involves taking their answers seriously, listening to their reasons for being in such emotional pain, and for any potential reasons they want to continue to stay alive. The letter F in the SAFE model stands for focus. Help them focus on their reasons for living and avoid trying to impose your reasons for them to stay alive. After they identify something that connects them to life, even if that something is a doubt about dying, it is important to find out a few things to establish immediate safety. Focusing on creating a safety plan is another part of this step. Have they already done something to try to kill themselves before talking with you? Does the person experiencing thoughts of suicide know how they would kill themselves? Do they have a specific detailed plan? What's the timing for their plan? What sort of access do they have to their planned method? Do they have access to drugs or alcohol, which can make things worse? Who else can be involved as an appropriate helper? The more helpers, the better. And finally, the letter E in the SAFE model stands for empower. A lot of times, a person thinking about suicide may feel powerless and hopeless. Allowing them to recognize and use their resources can help them feel empowered. Involving them in creating a safety plan and collaborating with other helpers can also help them gain a little more control over their lives. Empowerment comes from being informed about safety and, if need be, treatment options, feeling heard and respected, and from making choices in the safety plan process. Adversity is not destiny. Human beings are resilient and capable of learning to cope and expand their window of tolerance. Human brain is highly adaptable and the body wants to heal. The brain is continually changing in response to the environment. If the toxic stress stops and is replaced by practices that build resilience, the brain can slowly undo many of the stress-induced changes. There is well-documented research on how individuals' brains and bodies become healthier through mindfulness practices, exercise, good nutrition, adequate sleep, and healthy social interactions. If we want our school and community to be a place of safety and resilience, we must focus on our own resilience and embrace our personal wellness. This means making yourself and your health a priority. Something or someone will always happen to push your wellness down the list. The truth is, if you don't take care of yourself, your wellness would get worse and other issues will arise. Love yourself enough to live a healthy lifestyle. Give yourself the time and space that you need to take care of your physical, emotional, and social needs. And remember that you are not alone and help is available. The following school and community resources are available to you when you need them. Employee Assistance Program, or EAP, is a company-sponsored benefit designed to help employees and their families to address problems that can compromise personal satisfaction and occasionally job performance. It's professional, it's confidential, it's free and informal. Your EAP provider is Lifestyle Management Group, and their phone number is 912-429-6981 or 912-429-2596. Please take a note of the following free 24/7 crisis services. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Their number is 1-800-273-8255. Crisis Text Line. Their number is 741-741. Georgia Crisis and Access Line. Their number is 1-800-715-4225. You may also visit Gateway Behavioral Health Crisis Center, which is located on 2121 East Durand Avenue in Savannah, Georgia. In the moment of crisis, you may also visit your primary care provider, local emergency departments, or local urgent care centers or walk-in clinics. And now, please take a few moments to read about child abuse and neglect policy in the Savannah-Chatham Public Schools. Thank you so much for being a part of this training and for contributing to community and school safety and resilience. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at assist, and that's ASIST, at chlink.org, or call 912-661-0577. We hope you have a good rest of the day and do something for yourself that makes you smile. Goodbye.